There's something I've been thinking about lately. How we spend our whole lives looking for a place where we fit. Where the edges of who we are finally match up with the shape of where we're supposed to be. Like a key finding its lock. I used to think that was sentimental garbage. But now, sitting here in my rental apartment in Willow Creek, Montana, watching the way the afternoon light makes the mountains look like cut paper against the sky, I'm starting to wonder if there's something to it after all. My name is Elias Grant, and 3 weeks ago I arrived here for what I thought was a straightforward research position. I'm working on my master's in sociology, focusing on rural community dynamics. Basically, I study how small towns keep themselves alive when everyone's supposed to be moving to cities. Willow Creek was perfect for my thesis. Population of 847, stable for decades, low crime rate, high community engagement. The kind of place that should be dying, but isn't. The grant came through the university, enough to cover a semester of field work. I'd spend 4 months here, attend the community college part-time to blend in, interview residents, observe social structures, write my paper. Simple, professional, temporary. I grew up in Portland, where you can be anonymous in a crowd, where nobody expects you to wave at strangers or know your neighbor's name. Moving here felt like stepping into a postcard someone else had sent. Everything about Willow Creek is aggressively pleasant. The way people hold doors open, how the coffee shop owner remembers your order after one visit, the little wooden signs in every yard with hand-painted family names. My landlord, a woman named Ingrid Bergstrom, helped me move my boxes up the stairs to the apartment. She's maybe 60, with iron gray hair and the kind of smile that makes you feel like you're expected, even when you're not. "We're so glad to have you here," she said. And I remember thinking how strange it was that she said we instead of I. Like my arrival was something the whole town had been waiting for. I should mention that I've always been good at going unnoticed. In high school, I was the kid teachers forgot was in their class. In college, I could skip lectures for weeks before anyone realized. It's not that I'm forgettable, at least, I don't think I am. But I've perfected the art of blending in, of not taking up too much space. That's probably why sociology appealed to me. You watch people without them watching you back. But here in Willow Creek, people watch back. I didn't notice it at first, or maybe I did and I told myself it was just small-town friendliness. But there's a difference between being friendly and being observed. And I'm starting to realize, too late I think, that I've been observed for a very long time. This is what happened. The community college occupied a single brick building on the east side of town, sharing a parking lot with a Lutheran church. Willow Creek Community College, WCCC according to the faded letters above the entrance, offered exactly 7 degree programs and served maybe 200 students. My classes were in the humanities wing, Introduction to Sociology, Montana History, and a writing seminar that met on Thursdays. I picked courses that would let me observe without raising questions. Sociology made sense for my cover story. Montana history was a requirement, apparently, for anyone attending school in state. The writing class was small enough that I figured people would actually talk to each other. On my third day, a guy around my age sat down next to me in the sociology lecture. He had the kind of face that looked like he'd spent his whole life squinting into wind, weathered, even though he couldn't have been older than 23. His hair was dark brown, cut short, and he wore a flannel shirt that had seen better decades. "You're the new guy," he said before the professor arrived. Not a question. "Elias." I extended my hand. "Caleb Whitmore." His handshake was firm, quick. "You here for the whole semester?" "That's the plan." "Cool." He pulled out a notebook, flipped it open to a blank page. "Fair warning. Professor Voss talks for 90 minutes straight without notes. Your hand's gonna crap." He was right. Professor Voss, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a beaded chain, lectured about Durkheim and social cohesion like she was reciting scripture. I filled 6 pages of notes. Caleb filled 8. After class, he waited for me by the door. "You want coffee? There's a place 2 blocks down that doesn't completely suck." The cafe was called Bertha's, run by a woman who definitely wasn't named Bertha. Caleb ordered black coffee. I got the same, trying to blend in. We sat by the window where I could see the main street, a hardware store, a pharmacy, a post office, everything you'd expect from a town trying hard to stay relevant. "So, what brings you to Willow Creek?" Caleb asked, stirring sugar into his cup even though he'd said he wanted it black. I gave him the prepared answer. Graduate research, studying rural communities, 4 months of field work, then back to Portland. He nodded along like he'd heard it before. "You're not the first," he said. "First what?" "Student. We get them every few years. Anthropology people, usually. Sometimes journalism." He sipped his coffee, made a face. "They stick around for a month, take their notes, leave. Never see them again." Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. "Did you talk to any of them?" "No, I was in high school. But my dad did. He's on the town council." Caleb leaned back in his chair, studying me. "He says they always ask the same questions. How long have you lived here? What keeps you here? Do you ever want to leave? Like, they're expecting us to be miserable or something." "Are you?" I asked. "Miserable?" He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I'm still here, aren't I?" That was when I noticed the people walking past the window. 3 of them, 2 women and the man, all stopped at the exact same moment to look inside. Not at the cafe in general, at us, at me. Caleb didn't turn around. He just kept stirring his coffee, around and around, even though the sugar had long since dissolved. "You'll get used to it," he said quietly. "Used to what?" "People paying attention." He finally set down a spoon. "It's a small town. Everyone notices everything. You sneeze on Monday, by Wednesday, someone's asking if you're catching a cold." The 3 people outside moved on, walking in perfect sync down the sidewalk. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Small towns are like that." But Caleb's expression had changed. He looked at me the way you'd look at someone who just said something wrong, something that revealed they didn't understand the rules. "Sure," he said, his voice flat. Just like that. We finished our coffee in silence. When I left, I could feel him watching me through the window, his reflection doubled in the glass. The apartment came furnished, a lumpy couch, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs, a bed that groaned whenever I rolled over. Ingrid had stocked the fridge with basics before I arrived. Milk, eggs, bread, a casserole wrapped in foil with reheating instructions written in careful cursive. The gestures should have felt kind. Instead, it felt presumptuous, like she'd known exactly when I'd be hungry. That first week blurred together in a way that made my field notes useless. I'd write down what happened each day, but reading them back, I couldn't tell Tuesday from Thursday. The same faces appeared at the same times. The mailman arrived at 2:15 p.m. The woman across the street watered her garden at 6:30 a.m. Caleb texted me at 9 p.m. every night to see if I wanted to grab food. I started joining him. We go to the diner on Main Street, another place with a woman's name that wasn't owned by anyone with that name. Rita's served breakfast all day and had exactly one vegetarian option, which I ordered once before Caleb told me nobody actually ate it. "It's been on the menu for 6 years," he said, drowning his fries in ketchup. "I think they keep it there in case someone like you shows up." "Someone like me?" "From outside." He said it casually, but I caught something underneath. Not hostility, more like identification. Like he was marking me as a category he understood. I tried asking him about his life, but his answers came out rehearsed. Born here. Parents both born here. Grandparents moved to Willow Creek in the 60s from somewhere he didn't specify. He was studying business at WCCC because his dad wanted him to, even though he hated numbers. He'd never left Montana. Never? I asked. Well, Billings, for a basketball tournament in high school. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. We lost. The way he said it made it sound like losing was inevitable, preordained. It was Thursday night when things started feeling wrong in a way I couldn't explain away. I was in my apartment reading for Professor Voss's class when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Normal enough. The building had 4 units, and Ingrid lived on the first floor. But these footsteps stopped right outside my door. I waited. No knock, no sound of keys, just presence. I got up, looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The footsteps resumed, moving away toward the stairs. I opened my door, stuck my head out. Nobody there. But I could still hear them, descending the stairs. A steady rhythm that sounded wrong. Too even. Too measured, like someone counting. I closed the door, locked it, went back to my reading, but the words wouldn't stick. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to someone standing in my bedroom. My eyes adjusted to the dark. There was a figure near the window, backlit by the streetlight outside. Tall, completely still. I couldn't make out features, just a silhouette that didn't move, didn't breathe. My throat closed up. I wanted to yell, to move, but my body had locked itself down, like a machine that knew better than I did what would happen if I made noise. We stayed like that, me frozen in bed, the figure frozen by the window, for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. Then I blinked, and the figure was gone. I turned on every light in the apartment, checked the window lock, checked the front door, both still secure. I searched the closet, the bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, Caleb met me at Bertha's before class. I must have looked terrible because he set down his coffee and leaned forward. You okay? I almost told him. Almost said that someone had been in my apartment, that I'd heard footsteps, that I'd woken up to a stranger watching me sleep. But something stopped me. The same instinct that had kept me quiet when the figure was standing there. Just didn't sleep well, I said. Caleb nodded, but his eyes lingered on my face. The first couple weeks are always weird. New place, new bed. Your brain does strange things. Yeah, I said. Probably that. Probably. He picked up his coffee again. But if anything feels seriously wrong, you should tell someone. Ingrid, maybe. Or me. The way he said it made me think he already knew. That everyone already knew. That I was the only one pretending things were normal. I looked out the window at the street. The same people walked by at the same time they had yesterday. The same clouds hung over the mountains in the same configuration. Everything repeating, like a loop I'd stepped into without realizing it had already been running for years. I will. I lied. I started seeing her on my 10th day in Willow Creek. She appeared first in the writing seminar, sitting in the back row where no one else sat. A woman in her 50s, maybe, with graying blonde hair pulled into a bun. She wore a blue cardigan and kept her hands folded on the desk in front of her. I noticed her because she never moved. Not when Professor Hayes asked us to free write, Not when the student next to me knocked over her water bottle. Not when the class ended and everyone filed out. I packed up my notebook slowly, watching her. She stared straight ahead at the whiteboard, at nothing. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you waiting for someone?" She didn't respond, didn't even blink. I walked closer. "Hello?" When I was 3 feet away, she turned her head to look at me. Her eyes were the wrong color, too pale, almost gray, and there was something off about her skin, like it had been pulled too tight across her skull. "You're late," she said. Her voice sounded waterlogged. "Late for what?" She smiled. Her teeth were perfect, too white, like props. "Everyone's been waiting." I stepped back. "I think you might have the wrong person." She kept smiling, just kept smiling with those too white teeth and that too tight face. I turned and walked out of the classroom, my pulse hammering in my ears. In the hallway, Caleb was leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone. "Hey," he said. "You look spooked." "There's someone in there," I said, pointing back at the room. "A woman. She's acting really strange." Caleb glanced at the door. "What woman?" "Blue cardigan, sitting in the back." He walked past me into the classroom. I followed. The back row was empty. Every row was empty. "Nobody here," Caleb said. I stared at the spot where she'd been sitting. The desk looked exactly the same as all the others. No indentation in the seat, no warmth, no proof that anyone had been there at all. "I saw her," I said, but my voice came out uncertain. Caleb put a hand on my shoulder. "When's the last time you slept?" "I'm not making this up." "I didn't say you were." His tone was gentle, the way you'd talk to someone on the edge of panic. "But you look like hell, ma'am. Maybe you should skip sociology. Go back to your place. Take a nap." I wanted to argue, but he was right about one thing. I haven't slept properly since the figure in my bedroom. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd snap awake, convinced someone was standing over me. My thoughts had started feeling slippery, like I was trying to hold water in my hands. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe." I didn't go home. Instead, I went to the library, a small brick building next to the post office that smelled like old paper and wood polish. I needed to look something up, though I wasn't sure what. Information about the town, maybe. History. Previous researchers who'd come here. The librarian was a man in his 70s with liver spots on his hands and bifocals that made his eyes look huge. His name tag said Vernon. "Help you find something?" he asked. "Do you have any records about Willow Creek? Archives, maybe? Historical documents?" Vernon's magnified eye studied me. "What kind of documents?" "Anything. Town history, census data, news articles." He didn't move for a long moment. Then he nodded toward a corner of the library I hadn't noticed before. "Microfiche machine over there. Files are in the cabinet next to it." The cabinet held maybe 50 rolls of film, each labeled with year ranges. I started with the 1990s, figuring I'd work my way back. The microfiche machine flickered to life, projecting grainy newspaper pages onto the screen. Most of it was mundane. Town council meetings, high school sports scores, obituaries. But then I found something that made my hand stop turning the dial. A headline from 1998. "Local woman dies in hiking accident." The photo next to the article showed the woman I'd seen in the classroom. Same face, same graying blonde hair, same blue cardigan. Her name was Eleanor Vance, age 53. She'd fallen from a cliff on the Eastern Trail, broke her neck. Survived by a daughter and 2 grandchildren. I read the article 3 times, checked the date again. 1998, 27 years ago. I printed the page, my hand shaking so badly I almost tore the paper. When I looked up, Vernon was standing right behind me. I jerked back, nearly knocking over the chair. "Find what you needed?" he asked. His voice was pleasant, conversational, but his eyes weren't blinking. "Yeah," I managed. "Good," he smiled. "Most people don't bother looking. They just accept what they're told." "What do you mean?" But Vernon had already turned away, walking back to his desk with a shuffling gait that seemed practiced, rehearsed. I folded the article and shoved it into my backpack. My phone buzzed, a text from Caleb. "You good?" Voss asked where you were. I stared at the message. How did Caleb know I'd skipped sociology? I hadn't told him I was leaving campus. Another text came through. "I'm at Rita's if you want to talk." I found him in our usual booth, a plate of fries already half gone. He looked up when I sat down, his expression neutral. "You skipped," he said. "How did you know I wasn't in class?" He shrugged. "Small town. Someone saw you at the library. Word gets around." "Someone told you I was at the library?" "Yeah." "Within the last hour?" "Yeah." He pushed the fries toward me. "You want to tell me what's going on?" I pulled out the article, unfolded it on the table between us. "I saw this woman in Professor Hayes' class. She talked to me. Then I found this." Caleb looked at the article. His expression didn't change. "Eleanor Vance," he said quietly. "You knew her?" "No. She died before I was born." He slid the article back to me. "You saw a dead woman in your class." The way he said it, so calm, so matter of fact, made my stomach turn. "That's not possible." "No," Caleb agreed. "It's not." We sat in silence. Outside, people walked past the diner window in their usual patterns. The waitress refilled coffee cups. The cook called out orders. Everything normal, everything routine. "This town was wrong," I said. Caleb picked up a fry, examined it like it held answers. "Yeah." "You know that." "You've always known that." "Yeah." "Then why do you stay?" He set down the fry, met my eyes. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely sad. "Where else would I go?" he said. I thought about the other researchers Caleb had mentioned, the ones who came, asked questions, and left. I wondered if they'd seen Eleanor Vance too. I wondered if that's why they left. I wondered if they'd actually been allowed to leave at all. "I need to get out of here," I said. Caleb nodded slowly. "You could try." "What does that mean?" But he just went back to eating his fries, and I knew, with a certainty that felt like ice water in my veins, that I wouldn't get a better answer than that. I packed at 4 a.m., shoved clothes in my duffel bag, grabbed my laptop, my field notes, everything I brought with me. I'd leave the furniture, leave the casserole in the fridge, leave whatever I couldn't carry. I just needed to get out. The drive to the highway should have taken 15 minutes. I knew this because I'd looked at the map every night that week, memorizing the route. East on Maple, left on Highway 12, straight shot to the interstate. Simple. My car started fine. The streets were empty, dark except for a few streetlights that buzz with that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache. I turned on the Maple, watching my rearview mirror for headlights that never came. Highway 12 stretched ahead, a black ribbon between fields of nothing. No other cars, no lights from houses, just road and darkness, and the mountains rising like broken teeth against the sky. I drove for 20 minutes, then 30. The landscape didn't change. Same fields, same fences, same telephone poles marching along the roadside. I checked the odometer. I should have hit the interstate by now. Should have seen signs for other towns. Nothing. At the 40-minute mark, I saw Willow Creek's water tower ahead. I was back at the beginning. Hadn't turned around. Hadn't circled back. I'd driven straight, watched the road the entire time. But there it was. The same water tower with Willow Creek painted in fading blue letters. The same grain elevator, the same railroad crossing. I pulled over, killed the engine, sat there with my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles ached. The sun started rising. I watched it through the windshield. This ordinary cosmic event that happened whether or not you were trapped in the town that wouldn't let you leave. When there was enough light to see by, I drove back to my apartment. Ingrid was waiting on the front steps. "Rough night?" she asked. She held a coffee mug in both hands, steam rising in the cold air. "I went for a drive." "I see that." She took a sip. "Find anything interesting?" I wanted to scream at her, wanted to demand answers, to shake her until she admitted what this place was. But her face was so pleasant, so genuinely concerned, but the words died in my throat. "No," I said. "Nothing." "Well, you look exhausted. Why don't you sleep a bit before class?" I trudged up the stairs, lay down on my bed with my clothes still on, my packed bag sitting by the door like evidence of failed escape. Sleep came eventually, thick and dreamless. When I woke up, it was noon. I'd missed Professor Voss's class. I made it to Professor Hayes's writing seminar, though. Sat in my usual seat, pulled out my notebook with hands that felt disconnected from my body. The room filled up with the usual students. Kendra, Marcus, that quiet girl whose name I could never remember. Eleanor Vance sat in the back row again. This time I didn't acknowledge her, didn't turn around, didn't make eye contact. If I ignored her, maybe she'd disappear. Maybe my brain would stop showing me dead people. Caleb came in late, took the seat next to mine. He looked worse than I felt. Dark circles under his eyes, skin pale and waxy. His hands shook when he set down his pen. "You okay?" I whispered. He didn't answer, just stared at his blank notebook page. Professor Hayes started talking about narrative structure, about how stories need frameworks to hold them together. I tried to focus, but Caleb had started rocking slightly in his seat, back and forth, a rhythm that didn't match anything. "Caleb," I said quietly. He stopped rocking, turned to look at me. His eyes were wrong. Pupils dilated so wide they'd swallowed the color. "Do you hear them?" he asked. "Hear what?" "They're calling. They've been calling for so long." The other students had stopped taking notes. They were all watching us now, their faces blank and expectant. Professor Hayes kept lecturing like nothing was happening. Caleb stood up. His chair scraped against the floor loud enough to make me flinch. He walked to the front of the classroom, stood in front of Hayes' desk. "Caleb," Professor Hayes said. But she was smiling. That same pleasant smile Ingrid wore, the smile everyone in this town seemed to have mastered. He lifted both hands, pressed his palms against his temples. "It's time," he said. Then he brought his head down on the desk. The sound was worse than I expected. Not a crack, more of a wet crunch, like biting in the celery. He lifted his head and I saw blood streaming from his nose, from a split in his forehead. "Caleb." I lurched from my seat, but someone grabbed my arm. "Kendra." Her grip was iron. He brought his head down again, and again. The desk's surface turned red. His face was changing shape, features flattening, bones breaking beneath skin. But he didn't stop, didn't scream. The only sound was the impact, over and over, a horrible percussion that matched the beating of my own heart. Nobody moved to help him, not Professor Hayes, not the other students. They just watched with those blank, expectant faces. I ripped my arm free from Kendra, stumbled toward Caleb. His head came up one more time. Our eyes met. What I saw there wasn't pain or fear. It was relief. "Finally," he said. Blood bubbled from his mouth. Then he collapsed. His body hit the floor with a sound like dropped meat, and the classroom went absolutely silent. I stood there, breathing hard, looking at my friend's corpse, at the blood pooling around his ruined skull, at Professor Hayes, who was still smiling. "Well," she said brightly, "I think that's enough for today." Class dismissed. The students filed out calmly, stepping around Caleb's body like it was a piece of furniture someone had inconveniently placed in the aisle. Eleanor Vance rose from her seat in the back, walked past me close enough that I could smell her, formaldehyde and rot. She paused at the door. "They're so proud of you," she said. Then I was alone with Caleb and Professor Hayes. "Shouldn't we?" My voice cracked. "We need to call someone. An ambulance. The police." "Oh, that's already been taken care of," Hayes said. She knelt beside Caleb's body, touched his shoulder with something almost like affection. He served his purpose beautifully. What purpose? He just killed himself in front of everyone. Not himself. She looked up at me. Her eyes had gone that same pale gray as Eleanor's. He gave himself. There's a difference. Footsteps in the hallway. 2 men in maintenance uniforms entered carrying a stretcher. They loaded Caleb's body with the efficiency of people who'd done this many times before. Didn't speak, didn't look at me. Just worked around the blood like janitors cleaning up a spill. When they left, Professor Hayes stood, smoothed her skirt. "You should go home, alas. Rest. Tomorrow will be very important." "I'm leaving," I said. "Right now. I'm getting in my car and..." "You tried that already." Her smile widened. "How does it work out?" I backed toward the door. She didn't follow. Just stood there in the blood-spattered classroom looking pleased with herself. "See them all," she called after me. I ran. Down the hallway, out of the building, across the parking lot to where I'd left my car. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. When the engine turned over, I almost sobbed with relief. I drove. Not toward the highway this time, I knew that wouldn't work. Just drove through the streets of Willow Creek, taking random turns, trying to find something that made sense. Every road led back to the center of town. Every alley deposited me onto Main Street. It was a maze with one solution, and the solution was staying put. Finally, I parked outside my apartment building, sat in the driver's seat with my forehead against the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe normally. When I looked up, Ingrid was on the steps again, still holding that coffee mug, still smiling. I got out of the car and walked inside without acknowledging her, climbed the stairs to my apartment, locked the door, pushed my packed bag aside and sat on the floor with my back against the wall. Caleb was dead. I was trapped. And tomorrow, apparently, was going to be very important. I stopped going to classes, stopped leaving the apartment except to use the bathroom down the hall. Ingrid left food outside my door, sandwiches wrapped in plastic, thermoses of soup, Once a whole roasted chicken that I didn't touch because how do you roast a chicken for someone and not wonder why they're not answering their door? The dead people came more frequently now. A man in coveralls appeared in my bathroom mirror while I was brushing my teeth. He stood behind me, face blank, mouth moving like he was trying to speak but couldn't remember how. I didn't turn around, just kept brushing until he faded. A child sat on my couch one afternoon, maybe 7 years old, wearing a yellow dress with daisies embroidered on the collar. She played with a rag doll, humming tunelessly. When I walked past her to get water, she looked up. "You're the one," she said. "I don't know what that means." "Yes, you do." She went back to playing with her doll, making it dance across the cushions. "Everyone knows. We've been waiting. Such a long time." I locked myself in the bedroom after that, but she was already there, sitting cross-legged on my bed. "You can't hide from yourself," she said, and then she was gone. My phone rang constantly. My advisor from the university, my roommate from Portland, numbers I didn't recognize. I stopped answering on the 3rd day, stopped charging it on the 4th, let it die on the 5th. On the 6th day, someone knocked on my door. I'd stopped answering those too, but this knock was different, frantic, accompanied by a voice I recognized. "Elias, open the door." My mother. I scrambled up, nearly tripping over the blanket I'd wrapped myself in, fumbled with the locks, yanked the door open. She stood in the hallway, her face tight with worry. Diane Grant, 52 years old, Portland public defender, owner of 3 cats and the temper she'd never quite learned to control. She looked exactly like she had when I'd left. Auburn hair starting to gray at the temples, reading glasses on the chain around her neck, the particular expression that meant she was about to tell me everything I'd done wrong. "Mom," I said, and my voice broke on the word. She pulled me into a hug. "Jesus Christ, Elias. You haven't answered your phone in almost a week. The university called me, said you'd stop showing up to your check-ins. What the hell is going on?" I should have warned her. Should have told her to leave immediately, to get in her car and drive and not stop until she hit Oregon. But I was so relieved to see someone from outside, someone real, that I just let her hold me and pretended everything would be fine now. "Come inside," I said. She did, looking around the apartment with the critical eye of someone mentally cataloging everything wrong. The unwashed dishes, the clothes piled in corners, the window I'd covered with a blanket because I couldn't stand looking at the street anymore. "Elias, this is..." She stopped, turned to face me. "What happened to you?" Where could I even start? The town that won't let me leave? The dead people? My friend beating his skull apart on the desk while everyone watched? "This place is wrong," I said. "I need to leave. We need to leave. Right now." "Okay." She said it immediately, without question, and I could have cried with gratitude. "Okay. Pack your things. We'll figure out the rest later." I grabbed my duffel bag, still packed from my last failed escape. Mom helped me gather my laptop, my notes, anything important. We were at the door in 10 minutes. Ingrid stood at the bottom of the stairs. "Leaving so soon?" she asked. Her smile was wider than before, showing too many teeth. "We're leaving," my mother said, her voice hard. "And you're going to get out of our way." "Of course." Ingrid stepped aside with exaggerated politeness. "Safe travels." We got to my mom's car, a silver sedan parked on the street. I'd never been so happy to see an out-of-state license plate. She started the engine, pulled away from the curb, and I watched the apartment building shrink in the side mirror. "Which way to the highway?" she asked. "East. Highway 12. She nodded, turned where I indicated. The streets were full of people now. It was just past 5 p.m., that time when everyone pretends to have places to be. They all stopped to watch us pass. All of them. Standing on sidewalks and doorways beside parked cars. Their heads turned in unison as we drove by. "Are they always like this?" Mom asked, her hands tight on the wheel. "Yeah." We reached Highway 12, the same road I'd driven before. My mother accelerated, pushing 60, then 70. The town fell away behind us. "It's going to work this time," I said, more to convince myself than her. We drove for 15 minutes, then 20. The landscape stayed the same. Fields, fences, telephone poles, but it was different from when I'd driven alone. We were actually making progress. I could feel it. Then I saw the sign ahead. "Welcome to Willow Creek." "No," I said. "No, no, no." Mom slammed on the brakes. We skidded to a stop in the middle of the road. She stared at the sign, then at me, then back at the sign. "We just left," she said. "We drove straight. We didn't turn around." "I know." "This isn't possible." "I know." She tried again, turned around, drove the other direction. We made it farther this time, almost 30 minutes, before we saw the water tower ahead. She tried every road out of town, north, south, east, west. Every single one led back to the center, to Main Street, to the diner where I used to eat fries with Caleb. Finally, she pulled over in front of the library, cut the engine. We sat there in silence, both of us trying to process what had just happened. "We're trapped," she said. "Yeah." She turned to look at me. "What is this place?" Before I could answer, Vernon appeared beside the car. He tapped on Mom's window with one liver-spotted hand. She rolled it down a crack. "Can I help you?" "The council would like to meet with you," Vernon said. His huge eyes fixed on my mother with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Both of you." "We're not interested." It wasn't a request. His smile revealed dentures too white, too perfect. "The waiting at the church, 7 o'clock. Please don't be late." He walked away before either of us could respond. Mom rolled up the window. "Elias, what the fuck is happening?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, I think it's been happening for a long time." We sat in the car until 6:45. Didn't talk much. What was there to say? Finally, Mom started the engine. "We should go," she said. "If we don't show up, they'll just come find us." The church stood at the north end of Main Street, a white building with a steeple that seemed to lean slightly to the left. I passed it dozens of times but never gone inside. Now as we pulled into the parking lots, I could see lights in the windows, shapes moving inside. We got out of the car. Mom reached for my hand, squeezed it once. "Stay close to me," she said. We walked up the steps together. The front doors were already open, revealing the sanctuary filled with people. The entire town, from what I could tell. They sat in the pews, silent and still, all facing the altar. Standing at the altar, wearing a white robe that looked like it had been sewn from bed sheets, was Professor Hayes. She smiled when she saw us. "Welcome," she said. "We've been waiting for you." Mom's hand tightened on mine. We stood in the doorway, every eye in the church now turned toward us, and I realized with horrible certainty that whatever was about to happen had been planned long before I ever came to Willow Creek, maybe before I was even born. We walked down the center aisle. Every face turned to watch, expressions uniform in their serenity. I recognized most of them. The woman from the coffee shop, the mailman, my classmates from WCCC, Vernon. Sat in the front pew, hands folded in his lap like a child waiting for communion. Mom kept her grip on my hand. I could feel her pulse through her palm, rapid and strong. Professor Hayes gestured to two empty chairs that had been placed directly in front of the altar. "Please, sit." We did. What else could we do? The doors had closed behind us, and I could hear the lock click into place. Hayes folded her hands, the picture of someone about to deliver good news. "First, let me apologize for the unconventional nature of this gathering. I know you must be confused." "Confused is one word for it," Mom said. Her voice had that dangerous edge I recognized from when she was cross-examining hostile witnesses. "I understand. But I hope after tonight, you'll see that everything we've done has been necessary, important, sacred even." Hayes paused. "Elias, do you know why you were accepted for the grant to study Willow Creek?" "Because my proposal was good," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were wrong. "Your proposal was adequate. We've received better ones over the years. No. You were chosen because of who you are, what you carry inside you." Mom started to stand. "We're leaving." 3 people rose from the pews, 2 men and a woman, all moving with synchronized precision. They didn't approach, just stood there, blocking the aisles. A warning. Mom sat back down. Hayes continued as if nothing had interrupted. "We are the prosperity and order. We've maintained this town for 117 years, waiting for the right vessel, the right moment." She smiled. "Waiting for you." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Your bloodline, Elias. Your mother doesn't know, how could she? But your father's family has a very particular heritage. They were among the first settlers of Willow Creek, among the first believers." "My father left before I was born," I said. "I never met him." "We know. That was unfortunate, but not uncommon in these situations. The men in your line often feel compelled to flee, to resist what they carry. But it doesn't matter. The inheritance passes regardless." Mom's voice was quiet, controlled. "What inheritance?" "A strayon." Hayes spoke the name with reverence, like it was precious. "A consciousness older than this continent, older than human memory. It sleeps in fragments, scattered across bloodlines, waiting to be made whole again." The child in the yellow dress had said it. "You're the one." Eleanor Vance. "They're so proud of you." Caleb, before he died. "They're calling." "You're insane," I said. "We're devoted." Hayes gestured to the congregation. "Everyone in this town serves the order. We've built Willow Creek around you, Elias. Every person, every building, every street, all of it designed to keep you here until you were ready." "Ready for what?" "To awaken. To become what you were always meant to be." Mom stood up again, and this time she didn't sit back down when the sentries moved. "You're describing a cult. A sick, delusional cult that's kidnapped my son." "Your son was never kidnapped. He came willingly. He accepted the grant. He enrolled in classes. He made friends." Hayes's expression softened with something that might have been pity. "And you came to retrieve him. Another link in the chain. What does that mean? Women are important to the awakening process. They have permeable souls, open spirits that can be shaped, channeled. Hayes stepped down from the altar, moving closer to my mother. The order requires a conduit, someone whose essence can bridge the gap between dormancy and manifestation. My mother understood before I did. I saw it in her face, the realization, the horror, the furious denial. "No," she said. "It's the highest honor. Your sacrifice will be remembered in our liturgy forever. Diane Grant, mother of Estrayon reborn." Hayes reached out as if to touch her shoulder. Mom slapped her hand away. "Touch me and I'll break your fingers." The congregation stirred. A murmur ran through them like wind through wheat. Hayes withdrew her hand but didn't stop smiling. "We don't need your consent, only your presence. But I thought perhaps if you understood the importance." "Fuck your importance," Mom said. She turned to me. "We're leaving. Right now." She grabbed my arm, pulled me toward the side door. The sentries moved to intercept, but Mom was faster. She'd been a public defender in Portland for 20 years. She knew how to read a room, how to spot the weakness. She went for the smallest one, shouldered past him before he could react. We burst through the door into the night air. The parking lot stretched ahead, her car sitting under a streetlight like salvation. We ran. Behind us, I could hear the church doors opening, footsteps, Hayes' voice calling out. "There's nowhere to go." We reached the car. Mom fumbled with her keys, dropped them, grabbed them, got the door unlocked. We threw ourselves inside. She started the engine. People were emerging from the church, walking toward us with that same synchronized gait. Not running. They didn't need to run. Mom threw the car in reverse, hit the gas. We shot backward out of the parking lot, tires squealing. She shifted in the drive and we tore down Main Street, buildings blaring past. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Anywhere. Everywhere. We keep moving until we find a way out." But I tried that. The roads all led back. The town was a closed loop and we were rats in a maze designed by people who'd been planning this for over a century. Still, we drove. What else could we do? Behind us, Willow Creek waited patiently. It had waited this long. It could wait a little longer. We made it 3 miles before the road gave out. Not metaphorically. The pavement literally ended, dissolved into dirt that turned to grass, that turned to nothing at all. Just a flat expanse of earth that shouldn't exist in a place with buildings and telephone poles and civilization. Mom stopped the car. We stared at the impossibility ahead. "How?" she said. I didn't answer. There was no answer that would make sense. She reversed, tried a different road. Same result. Every route out of town terminated in that empty void, like the world had been erased beyond Willow Creek's borders. Eventually, the engine started to sputter. We'd been driving for hours, burning through the gas tank in desperate circles. When it finally died, we coasted to a stop on Maple Street, 3 blocks from my apartment. The street was full of people. They stood in the line that stretched from sidewalk to sidewalk, patient and still. Hayes stood at the front, her white robe bright under the street lights. "Come out, please," she called. "There's no point in prolonging this." Mom locked the doors. "Stay in the car. They'll just break the windows." "Then let them. Make them work for it." But Hayes didn't come closer. She just waited, and the congregation waited with her. And after 10 minutes of sitting in that dead car, surrounded by silent watchers, my mother's resolve began to crack. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry I couldn't get you out." It's not your fault. I should have known something was wrong when they offered you this grant. It was too perfect, too generous. I should have..." Her voice broke. "I should have protected you better." I took her hand. "You came when I needed you. That's more than most people get." Someone tapped on the window. Vernon, his magnified eyes blinking slowly behind his bifocals. "We're prepared to wait all night," he said through the glass. "But your mother is already tired. Why make this harder?" Mom rolled down the window an inch. "Go to hell. We will do this gently," Vernon said. "With respect. She won't suffer. Fuck you." But we both knew it was over. The car was dead, the town was sealed, and fighting would only draw out the inevitable. When Mom opened her door and stepped out, I followed. We walked together toward Hayes and her congregation, hand in hand like we were heading into a courtroom instead of whatever this was. They led us back to the church. This time the altar had been prepared. Candles, symbols drawn in something that looked like chalk but smelled like copper. A stone basin filled with dark liquid. The congregation filed into the pews, but Mom and I were brought to the front. Hayes stood beside the altar, still wearing that expression of serene certainty. "Thank you for not resisting further. This will be easier for everyone." "How are you planning to do it?" Mom asked. Her voice was steady, but I felt her hand shaking in mine. "Quickly. Painlessly. The ritual requires blood, but we're not barbarians." Hayes nodded to two people I recognized, Marcus from my writing class and Kendra, who'd held me back when Caleb died. They moved toward my mother. I stepped between them. "No. Take me instead." "That's not how it works," Hayes said. "Your role comes after. Hers is now." "Then let me say goodbye." Hayes considered this, then nodded. "Of course. We're not without compassion." They stepped back. My mother turned to face me, and I saw everything in her expression. Rage at her helplessness. Love, fierce enough to hurt. And underneath it all, acceptance. She'd always been practical, my mother. She understood lost causes. "Listen to me," she said, quiet enough that only I could hear. "Whatever they do to you, whatever they turn you into, remember that you're Elias Grant. You're my son. That doesn't change. Mom, I need you to promise me something." She gripped my shoulders. "If there's any part of you left after this, any part that's still you, fight them. Make them regret this. I promise." She pulled me into a hug, fierce and brief. When she released me, her eyes were dry. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Marcus and Kendra took her arms. She didn't struggle as they led her to the altar, as they positioned her over the basin. Hayes raised a knife. Simple. Kitchen, ordinary. The kind of thing you'd use to cut vegetables. I tried to look away. Couldn't. My body wouldn't obey. The congregation began to chant. Not words I recognized, but sounds that felt older than language. The air in the church grew thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. Hayes placed the knife against my mother's throat. "For Astrion," she said. "For the awakening." The blade moved. Red opened across pale skin. My mother's eyes found mine, held them as the light went out. Something broke inside me. Not grief, that would come later. This was different. Like a door I'd never known existed had just been kicked open, and behind it was a vast, hungry darkness that recognized me as home. The chanting grew louder, the candles flared, and I felt something ancient and patient uncurl in the space where my mother's last breath should have been. It looked at the world through my eyes and smiled. I understand now. They showed me everything after the awakening. Not with words. A Strayon doesn't need words. It simply opened the memories that had always been mine, but that I had been prevented from accessing. Like finding a photo album from a childhood I never knew I had. The town wasn't waiting for me to arrive. The town was built because I would arrive. Because I had to. Because every choice I'd ever made led here. And those choices were never really mine to begin with. My father didn't abandon my mother. He ran. Like all the men in my bloodline ran when they felt a Strayon stirring in their sons. He made it as far as Seattle before the pull became too strong. They found his body in a hotel room. Cause of death listed as heart failure. He was 33. I have his medical records now. The order keeps excellent documentation. My interest in sociology wasn't random. The fragment of a Strayon inside me was already preparing, already pushing me toward the study of communities, of social structures, of how groups function, making sure I'd recognize a good research opportunity when I saw one. The grant came through my university, yes, but the university funding came from an endowment. I traced it back through shell corporations and charitable trusts. The money originated from Willow Creek, from the Prosperian Order. They paid for my education. They made sure I had exactly the right qualifications, the right interests, the right isolation that would make me accept a solo research position in rural Montana. Caleb was real. So was his friendship, in a way. He'd been assigned to me since birth, born the same year as me, raised specifically to be my companion when I arrived. His death was planned, necessary. The order required a demonstration of sacrifice, something to break down my rational defenses and make me receptive to what came next. Every person in this town exists because I exist. When the order learned that my mother was pregnant, they have people everywhere watching the bloodlines. They began construction. Willow Creek was farmland before 2001. They built it in 8 months, brought in families, created histories, forged documents. The buildings are new but made to look old. The cemetery is full of fake graves. Eleanor Vance was never a real person. She was a story they told, a ghost they performed for my benefit. The previous researchers who came here, there weren't any. Caleb lied because he'd been taught to lie. Every part of the narrative was designed to make me feel like I'd stumbled into something I could escape from. But you can't escape from yourself. I look at Willow Creek now with eyes that see what it truly is. A stage. A carefully constructed theater where every actor knew their role except me. And now I've stepped in the mine. The congregation gathers each morning in the church. They kneel before the altar when my mother died, and they pray to me, to a Strayon. They're so happy, so fulfilled. After 117 years of preparation, of waiting, of maintaining this elaborate fiction, they finally have their God. I should hate them. My mother's last words were a command to fight, to make them regret. But a Strayon doesn't hate. It doesn't feel the way Elias Grant felt. It observes. It exists. And it understands that everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. Sometimes, late at night, I can feel him, the boy I was before. He's screaming somewhere deep inside, pounding against walls that don't exist anymore, He wants his mother. He wants to go home. But I am home. I was always coming home. Willow Creek isn't a trap. It's a womb. And I've finally been born.